U.S. President Donald Trump has distanced himself from Roy Moore after the Republicans suffered a historic defeat for the party in conservative Alabama. The victory for Democrat Doug Jones narrows the Republican majority in the Senate to 5149, which could complicate Mr. Trump's legislative plans. Mr. Moore's campaign was rocked by allegations of sexual misconduct made by several women, which he denied. Mr. Jones is the first Democrat to win a U.S. Senate seat for Alabama in 25 years. Despite top Republicans deserting ultra-conservative Mr. Moore amid claims of child molestation, the U.S. president had offered his full endorsement. Mr. Trump even recorded an automated phone message for the embattled Senate candidate in the days leading up to the election. In his first reaction on Twitter, Mr. Trump congratulated the Democratic victor Mr. Jones. But he went on to remind his followers that he initially supported Mr. Moore's mainstream Republican opponent, Luther Strange, in the party's primary election. He added, "If last night's election proved anything, it proved that we need to put up great Republican candidates to increase the razor-thin margins in both the House and Senate." Mr. Jones told reporters at a news conference on Wednesday that he received calls from President Trump, Democratic leader Senator Chuck Schumer and his Republican counterpart, Senator Mitch McConnell. He said Mr. Trump made a very gracious phone call and extended an invitation to the White House. Mr. Jones added that he has not yet spoken to Mr. Moore. "I'm going to let him make that decision," he said. The Alabama seat was made vacant by U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions earlier this year. He said Mr. Trump made a very gracious phone call and extended an invitation to the White House. Mr. Jones added that he has not yet spoken to Mr. Moore. "I'm going to let him make that decision," he said. The Alabama seat was made vacant by U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions earlier this year. How did the race unfold? Mr. Jones won with 49.9% of the vote, to Mr. Moore's 48.4%. All votes from precincts around the state have been counted. Mr. Moore has refused to concede, with the 70-year-old former judge telling supporters, "Realize that when the vote is this close that it's not over." The margin of victory is well above the half a percentage point which would have triggered a recount. But Alabama Secretary of State John Merrill, quoted by the Washington Post, said a recount could still be ordered if a review of write-in votes and overseas ballots narrowed it to within this range. Even if the final result is outside the 0.5% margin, either candidate can request a recount if they are prepared to pay the costs. Mr. Jones told his supporters in a victory speech that the entire race has been about dignity and respect. The 63-year-old is a former lawyer known for helping convict two Ku Klux Klan members who bombed a black church in 1963 in Birmingham, killing 4 girls. He has never held elected office. Women voters helped Mr. Jones to victory. Black voters overwhelmingly picked Mr. Jones. What effect will the election have on the Senate?